Morning, everybody. Morning, 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 morning. Thank you for joining our session today. Welcome to the DVT Insights session with some very, very interesting people to chat to today. Session is Agile dead? And obviously, I'm going to be your host. You can call it what you want. More like antagonistic prompter of deep questions and interrogation, particularly of Phil. Wave and say hello, Phil, to everybody that's joined us today.
Hi, everybody. I will be introverting hard after this call, Ewan. Carl, I'm just saying, I'm going to be disappearing.
Please note, people, please note everybody that's on the call, Phil did that little royal wave there, so you know exactly what his personality type is like. Anncois is here as well. Anncois is super wonderful. Look, she waves in a friendly fashion. There she is. Hello, Anncois. Why don't you just introduce yourself? You get 20 seconds, Anncois. Tell everybody who you are.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Anncois. I'm an Agile coach, and I believe in making people awesome.
Oh, that's terrible. That's a terrible Agile thing to say. Melani's laughing at that, so let's pick on Melani next. Hello, Melani. Welcome to the session today.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you so much for hosting us.
You only get 15 seconds to say who you are because you're far more efficient as an executive.
Thanks, Karl. Yeah, I'm a recovering developer as an Agile coach. That's it.
Ewan just jumped in there right on top of Melani's introduction. That was very rude, Ewan. Typical Agilist going, oh, we don't need that. We'll just go straight to this, but it's more valuable. Moving on, right?
We're just self-organized.
Lovely.
Yes.
Lovely. All right, so
Karl, yes, I am an executive, but I am definitely an Agilist.
So you're a proponent for this Agile thing, are you?
Absolutely.
Pity that it's dead then.
Let's see at the end of the call.
Okay. Well, look, fortunately, we have a number of people that have joined us in the audience today. Audience, you're not getting off the hook today. You are going to participate in the session. How, you might ask? Well, if I told you how, then you'd be able to ask. So I will tell you how you can ask. In our chat window, please log your questions. Please raise those in there, particularly when I pose a question that's open to you. So one of the ways that you can respond is either in the chat window, expressing all your anger and disgust at the fact that we're saying that Agile is dead. Alternatively, use the reactions and pop up little things on the screen that either tell us we're talking rubbish or we're actually making sense. So the first thing I'm going to ask you all to do, so we can just test it out and see if you can find your reactions, little icons, is use your reactions and give us your best reaction that tells us whether you agree or not. Is Agile dead? It is dead. Say it's dead. Say it's dead. Say it's dead. A couple of people are saying yes. Some are saying, oh, yeah, I like that one. Someone used the little emoji with the halo on it, clearly indicating an indication of dead. Oh, someone said, no, don't be silly. Of course it's dead. It's dead. Why else would you be at this call today? And that's why I've got these Agile people here to demonstrate to you. Agile's over, people. It's done. It's not just dead. It's been buried. How do you know it's been buried? Well, there are like these massive organizations now, McKinsey, PwC, and others. And I'm going to point at Melani soon because she didn't introduce this aspect of her side of things. But I'm going to point out she's one of the people that murdered Agile. So why do I say that? Oh, yeah, look how harsh that was.
Yes.
Straight away.
Go, Melani, do it. We want agility, not Agile.
Murdered it and revived it again as a better version.
So this comes to the point that Agile and these expert people here will probably correct me. And the reason why we have them here is they've been involved in Agile engagements in customer context, both internationally within the South African context as well, in terms of what organizations have been doing, what works, what doesn't work, and what the problems are in this space. I think it's useful context to realize that Agile's philosophy been around for more than 2 decades now in terms of when it originated, when it was novel, and some, I would say, 2 decades later, it's not new anymore. And unfortunately, it's got to the point where I think it's lost the innovation. It's lost the dimensions of it that made it a spark, and it's lost the intentions and motivations that were there at the start. So I would say that, and to our panel, nowadays, when you engage with customers, How frequently do you come across an organization that goes, no, we're not agile. We've never heard of agile. Of course we're agile, aren't they? Do they say that, or do they come through going, what is this agile thing? And let's pick on Anncois first, because she had the best wave. Melani didn't wave at all. Ewan jumped in rudely, and Phil gave that terrible royal wave. So he's in the dog seat at the moment.
Thank you. Yes. Most organizations believe that they are agile in a way, all right, or have heard of it or understand what it's about. The thing is, we don't want them to be agile, because there's a difference between agile being an adjective, and they are using it at the moment as a noun. And that is what we don't want. We want agility, business agility, not agile. And that's what we mustn't sell them.
Why I'm even now I'm going to pick on people and go, boy, we're being theoretical and wonderful again, going, well, let's make a distinction now between agile and agility. Realize, people, all these terrible agile people, particularly this panel people, are trying to sell you agile. I'm saying rebel, kill it. It's gone. It's done. Oh, see, look, straight away these consultants jump on a new idea and go, I wonder how I can sell that to you. Ah, yes, let's kill it. Yes, let's kill it. No, let's just go. It's dead, and there needs to be something else. Maybe on a serious note, what I'll kind of go with is, I think one of the things I want to ask you folks today, again, given your experience in terms of dealing with organizations, is that my impression is that the origination of Agile and then subsequently the methodologies came out of a true motivation to go, things are not working as they were. We need a better way of doing it, and we have an intention of how we're going to work, and it should be framed by these principles in the manifesto. Yeah? Yes. Good. So look, I'm winning a convert. Anncois is definitely on my side. So now I'm going to start working on Phil soon. I can see that Phil's like going, how can I argue with Karl? I know he wants to do that. So the other thing I'm going to use probably quite frequently is just mute Phil so that there's one less dissenting voice, but just so everyone else knows that I might do that. But anyway, if there was that intention around Agile, then I guess my positioning now is going, that intent of working in a better way has been lost to the organizations that have adopted, etc., believing that now there's a methodology and a framework and this is how you do it. So the innovation and the dynamic adaptation of being agile to an organization is lost, because now there are ceremonies and there's, Melani, here's where it's coming to you. There's a whole maturity specification that a certain organization has put together. It's codifying the thing. It's going, here's what you must do to be agile, or even, Anncois, to have agility. Am I right? Am I wrong? Are people saying it's dead because of that or not? Come on, Melani, let us know what you think.
Karl, that's true. We might have created a little bit of a tick box exercise to say, what does Agile look like and what does maturity in Agile look like? But it's for a very specific reason. Yeah. The reason why I would agree in one sense that Agile is dead, because what people interpret as Agile is not Agile. That's dead. That's, you know, companies, and by the way, this is what we actually come across in the industry. Companies say, oh, yes, we're definitely an Agile team. And when you delve into that, they do stand-ups.
Right.
Amen.
That's it. They do stand-ups.
And there might be some planning and retrospectives, and they might have a Scrum Master. And now we're Agile, right?
And the thing is, there's always for me like a few things. Let's call it 3 things for now that really tells you whether you're an Agile team or not. Let's go through them. Is it a pull system in the organization? If I say that, it's your staff pulling from a prioritized backlog, right? So already in that loaded question, you need to have a product owner. They need to know what they're doing. They need to rank a backlog. They need to know what's priority for business. They need to know how to drive value. So just in that one thing, is it a pull system? There's a lot behind it, right? There's maybe a second thing, flexible scope. We all know by now that's probably the biggest difference between traditional way of working, traditional development, and Agile way of working is the scope should be flexible. If it's not, then we're doing very nice Scrum sessions with fixed scope and fixed deadline. That's not Agile. Agile is then dead. The Agile that you know, because you've probably been at an organization for 10 years, and this is how you know Agile, that's probably not the Agile that we're after, and it's probably dead. There's a third thing, like I mentioned, frequent releases. You know how many teams we do come across that Scrum ceremonies, it's beautiful, teams pull from the backlog. Most boxes are ticked, but do they actually release? No, they release twice a year. Twice a year. We could definitely argue that it's not an Agile team, right? We're looking at quick feedback loops. That means you haven't put something in front of your customer in 6 months. Do you really know what the customer needs? Do you really know what would bring value next in your next iteration for your customer? I don't know. Those three things for me is absolutely.
Okay.
Now you can assess, is my Agile environment, is it dead? Is it barely there? Is it?
So now we need to pick on the nice guy, Mr. Ewan. Ewan, disagree with them. Tell them Agile's alive and well and in your safe hands, yeah?
With pleasure. Yeah, no, what it traditionally was isn't what it is anymore, at least in the public mind. But it absolutely works wherever it's implemented properly. And I mean, these days, it's even more important. All the things that it does, the reducing risk and the increasing transparency and visibility of what teams are doing across the company, and all those things are more important now than they ever were. So it's even more disappointing that it's been tarnished by all the things that have been said already, by the formulas, the silver bullets, the magical box, buy our box for $10 and we'll solve all of your problems.
Burn down charts. It's the answer to everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it's not going to stop you falling off a cliff, but it'll make you fall faster and you'll be able to tell where you're going to hit the ground. It's useful.
All right, Phil. Otherwise, HR will come in and say it was harassment and discrimination that didn't give you a chance to voice your opinion. So quickly, before I mute you, let us know what you think.
So very hard to build on everything that's being said here. But perhaps the one part where I do also want to come back to is, because Melani nailed it with the three things to look for. There's also the element around leadership in your organization. I think that's something which we've also missed, or not missed, but people miss when we go, are we being agile? Because is being agile and is doing agile. So, you know, we're very successful tech. We can be successful tech. Are we doing stand-ups? Yes. Are we doing retros? Yes. But are we changing the way we work to actually do those things Melani's saying? Shared backlog where we can pull work. Are we changing our structures where I don't have to go through 3 layers to speak to the person who is a decision maker? Am I being given the empowerment to be a decision maker? So there's also that aspect. So to go back to your opening question, I've actually been in an organization who has openly said they know they're not agile. They're trying to solve it. And that's why they called us. But they were open to admit that they knew they were not agile. They've been running the same business model and the same business process, which was the organization from a structural perspective is effectively a marketing-driven organization. So everything would flow through the value chain, but designed and kicked off by marketing. They never changed things to actually look at, and from a leadership perspective, they realized they now need to change the entire flow and the way their business works. And that's the part where it gets really difficult. And then also where Agile sometimes tends to die is that, oh crap, I've got to change as well as in the leadership team. It's not just people who are lower down my value chain or further down. It's suddenly something in my world. So sometimes Agile is dead before it arrives because there isn't that willingness to change. So to go back, total agreement with what all my colleagues have said as well. The one piece which I think we sometimes underestimate though is where is the leadership team in this and why are they actually going down this journey?
So damn it, I should have actually posed this whole session as Agile is alive and well, just be contrary to all you people, because you're all backing each other up. Typical Agile people. Awful.
I want to add something there. I want to say to you, there's a quote by, I think it's Ewan that says that no movement is going to succeed, all right, until it becomes a parody of itself. And that is exactly what Agile has become, right? So we can say it has succeeded, and that is also why it's dead. Because we have these fetishes of stand-ups and things like that. And what we need to do is go back to the beginning of what Agile actually is. And for me, that's agility, is the values and the principles. And if you look through all your principles, there's only one principle that speaks to a practice. Only one. And that's the one that speaks to retrospectives. Not one of the other principles speaks to a practice of sorts.
So learning from
values, there we go. And that's where your continual improvement and that kind of thing starts coming in. So our values and our principles is what we need to get back to. And that is what agility and Agile should be built on.
No, definitely don't, Anncois. That's why you're here. You've got another 45 minutes of not shutting up that you need to do. Otherwise, this is going to be a very quiet and very short recording, which will get us all in trouble. Anyway, to build on Anncois' statement and Phil, yours as well, is I want to ask you, what are the things that you have seen at organizations in the most recent iterations of your engagements at customers, where you've gone in and to a point, they've implemented aspects of methodologies like Scrum, and they've gone, this is not working. What has underpinned that failure to realize the benefits that they were looking for? Because inevitably, people have always anchored this thing of going, waterfall didn't work. Well, actually, it worked incredibly well in the early days when structured approach to systems development absolutely made sense because of the technology. The evolution of technology has changed dramatically in the landscape and made all sorts of new things possible in terms of how you go about doing it. And now organizations are sitting there still anchoring on, we're better than we were in waterfall. But are they, given the capability and opportunity that exists in technology today? So that question boils down to, that's some context on my question of what is failing organizations in their use of Agile and associated methodologies today?
Can I answer that one?
Okay.
So statistically, the number one reason for Agile failing is around product ownership. To me, it makes actually logical sense, because that and actually what Phil mentioned, leadership, of course, buying into it and practicing servant leadership. I mean, you will fail. You will actually fail the entire team, because we're working on something, we're deploying something, but is it the most valuable item for the organization? Does it have business value? Of course, it's complex. It really is more complex than probably what we make it out to be today. But I want to say, if a company doesn't want to fail, there's two things that you can focus on. Immediately start focusing on product ownership. Make sure you understand product ownership. Make sure you clearly indicated that role, defined that role. Make sure that person understands that role. Make sure the person is available enough for the team. That's also one of the reasons around product ownership failing. Product owners drive business value. It's business-minded individuals that drive business value, but they know the industry. They make sure they know the industry. To create that backlog for that team, or teams even, right? And I always say prioritization is great, but before you know it, there's 100 items that's priority number one. Ranking is actually what we're after. Why? Because the team is then, oh, all right, there's 3 items next up, and I associate with number 2. I'm going to pull that one, I'm going to work on that one. So that's the one thing, is product ownership. Focus on product ownership. Get coaching in for your product owners if need be, because sometimes the 2-day training course is just not enough for a product owner, right? Let's be honest. And the second item is visualization. I want to say, don't get flustered with, are we a Scrum shop, or we a Kanban shop? What is lean? Should we not do safe because we're a big organization? Don't get hung up on methodologies and frameworks, and just start somewhere and focus on those 2 things. Start visualizing your work, start implementing those ceremonies, the obvious ones, retrospective being the most important, then stand-ups, etc. Just those 2 things. Focus on your product ownership and start visualizing your work. That's it.
And I actually want to elaborate on Melani's point here as well, which is where I've seen the best implementation of being agile, not doing agile. And then the exact opposite of an organization where they're doing agile, but they're not being agile, has boiled down to pretty much what Melani said. And I've seen it specifically, and I suspect where the issue boils down is in the client where we saw agile being done, ceremonies, etc., run like clockwork. It wasn't working because there was something fundamental. People were interchanging project and product, thinking it's the same thing. Melani is hitting on something very important, which is what agility is about. It's that business mind. What is that thing of value that we're going to ship out the door? In the places where I've seen successful, not even transformations, but ways of working, where an organization is going through absolute hell, but coming out with, absolutely shooting the lights out. It's where they've understood what their product is and that feedback loop with their customer, and very quickly understanding what is our essence of our business? What are we actually, why do people call us? And being able to maximize that flow, or not maximize, minimize that flow actually as fast as possible. So I have to share that. And that's where product owners come in. It's don't go, congratulations, you were a project manager, you're now a product owner, off you go. And don't forget these ceremonies, follow
the formula and you will get the outcome. Yeah. Build
exactly
it and they will come.
Yes. Precisely that. Yeah.
I want to give an example. I was called into a company where the at that stage product owner had given, and please, it's not a bad book, had given everyone in the team a copy of Jeff Sutherland's book, How to Do Twice the Amount of Work in Half the Time. Okay, fundamentally, all right, that already gives us a problem when we're thinking agility, because why do we want to do double the amount of work, right, in half the time? We're not thinking about the people, we're not mentioning the value, right? That goes right against our very first agile principle, which says to us that we're looking at communication, right? And the very first thing that I did was I told them to please throw the book out the window, not just the box, right? And we went back to our values and our principles, and it changed things around. So I'm not saying that the book is bad, but you know what? It's not always a cookie cutter effect. At the end of the day, the practice needs to follow what the company, the organization needs to do based on its people. And Scrum is absolutely brilliant, but you know what? It is not agile. Scrum does not make you agile. Half Scrum, half Jira does not equate to agile. It equates to a headache, to be very honest with you, at the end of the day. That does not make agility. I can see Phil smiling there. I'm not saying that Jira is bad either, but it's the value that we're getting out of it at the end of the day.
Anncois, I think that was almost a subtle invitation to one Elon Musk to go, your hardcore work is not going to work. Just saying, Elon, if you happen to join this session, it might be helpful. So we'll send him a recording. Maybe he'll get time to watch that when he's like sleeping on the floor somewhere. Anyway, Ewan, you've heard the rest of the panel going, these are the things that are causing it to fail at the moment. Do you agree? Is there more that you've seen that you go, these are the other aspects that are really getting in the way of success?
Well, I agree with the product owner being probably, well, in my case, definitely the first thing I mention and definitely the first thing I answer, because if that's no, as is already being covered, then you're in a problem space no matter what anyone else does. So totally agree with the product owner being key. And the one thing that wasn't mentioned, they have to be dedicated to it. Phil said, often it's a project manager who's now been promoted to a product owner, but still keeps their project manager role and something else. So they're neither available nor focused and dedicated. So that's a disaster. But yeah, there's a couple of other things. It's the willingness to change, everybody. And it's hard. People don't want to change. And the minute you start changing, spotlights get shined under things, under fridges and in corners, and there's cockroaches that get discovered, and that's not pleasant for everybody either. And that stops a lot of transformations too, because it's unpleasant. There are some people who are happy with the status quo because it doesn't stress them, it doesn't challenge them. They never have changing deliveries. They've mastered their delivery cycle, and it's just that, a cycle. But Agile means you have to learn and grow and be challenged and admit you failed and run with that. And
so we're Agile over here, but not over here.
Yes, I'm Agile in my OKRs because my bonus is tied to that, maybe. but my teams aren't agile because I'm not available, or I'm a product owner, but I don't have any authority within the company to make any decisions. So the team might have lots of great ideas, but I can't help them implement those ideas. I don't have the authority. And then it's agile in name only.
I guess that connects well with another item I want to pose to all of you is the whole idea of agile and the implementation of the methodologies that go with it. Is that still stuck in the IT department, or is it in the business as well now?
I think it's
I hope
mostly
not.
in IT, but I'm biased coming from that background. Sorry, Melani. I think it's mostly in IT from what I see, but I am biased, but it is cropping up all over the place and has been definitely shown to add value. Just the inspect and adapt approach can help almost anywhere, yet to find a business unit where that approach doesn't actually improve things.
Let me hop on. So just, and thanks for that, Ewan. So interesting is, for my experience, a lot of the stuff's now or transformations and agile transformations is either being driven, is being sponsored by IT, but it is not actually for the IT space. It's actually being carried over into the business side of things, or the traditional business side of things. As well as I've actually had it the other way around, where it's come from the leadership team going, roll this out throughout our organization. So again, depending on your organization type, some of the clients I've worked with aren't traditional, say, technology firms. And I'm going to say something controversial, is banks and financial services are actually technology houses in their own right. It's organizations which aren't specifically technology houses. There, it's being driven very heavily from a leadership perspective, going, we know we need to move our organization, or, we were doing things in this way prior to COVID. We got through COVID. How are we now going to do this differently moving forward? And I'm not talking about hybrid business models or hybrid working models. I'm talking about the way they actually look at the organization and how they actually work within the organization. So for me, it's used to always traditionally be in the tech space, but I would say personally, I would say over the last 5 years or so, I've seen this breakaway out of just only being in the tech space and actually starting to move out into other areas within the organization.
Has that not been part of the problem that's resulted in the death of Agile, is that it was something that primarily was being driven from the IT side and consequently didn't get the adoption and understanding in terms of product ownership and product development approaches that it needed in order to actually thrive and succeed?
I think you've hit onto something very strongly there, is that we tried in certain areas to just take that self-same model and put Scrum into HR, for argument's sake, instead of, understanding in certain areas that maybe Scrum doesn't work for HR. Maybe we should look at, process flow, Kanban, or something to that effect. I think in very many organizations that happened when they didn't get the right people in, and that could have very, very badly burnt them. But I worked in organizations where that didn't happen. And for instance, it was driven by HR and it worked really well. Where you have your agility driven by HR and the uptake then gets really, really strong. And then it's coming from the right level.
I will actually join on to what Anncois said. It's where it starts coming in from that culture perspective. So it depends, again, in terms of this conversation, is that it goes back to that, why are they wanting to go down this journey? But if you don't have that cultural change wanting to happen, this is going to be something which will live within a team. It'll live very well, or could do very well. But then the problem, as Anncois said, and I've seen it actually in one of our clients, where literally one department read up about this agile thing, and that they translated to, this agile thing means we are going to do Scrum. And it was actually an HR department. And they gave up on it after about a month because it was just too tedious. But at no point did they realize, hold on, we're actually changing our way of work. So why are we doubling up on meetings, for example? Or we're doing this, but we also do that. So the trouble is trying to, which is cool, you're trying the self-empowerment thing, but at no point did you actually check, what did my world require? Actually, that world required Kanban, or actually just something to help them with their flow. Now, literally the department next door, which was their legal team picked this up and actually ran with it to the point where it got rolled out throughout an entire geographic region. And that was done with literally it took 1 or 2 people seeing how this worked. Their world improved, and they just shared with the rest of their colleagues, and the colleagues naturally adapted to it. So where I want to just add on or go in agreement with Anncois is it goes back to that why, and then are we using the correct thing for the correct reason? Because it's that, what is Agile? Oh, it's Scrum, it's Kanban, oh, it's safe. It's, we grab those buzzwords we all know, or, Spotify or whatever it is. And I see Melani nodding, and Ewan's also there. It's like, how many times do we get called in for a Agile transformation, and operative word is transformation, and it's the first words we actually get when we walk into the client is, please Spotify us. Yeah, and I will stop my rant now, actually, I suppose, at this point. Ewan, I see you laughing because you've had that experience. Perhaps you'd like to run take over from here, but so I don't keep going down my rant.
Yeah, the Spotify thing is a good example, because that's the silver bullet. It was all wrapped up and it came out as a beautiful presentation that solved all your problems in one go, from a company that was doing brilliantly and everyone wanted to emulate, and they packaged it up and everyone thought they could just cut and paste. And it didn't work, and it was a mystery. But that was overwhelmed for a long time by people speaking at conferences about the holy grail that is the Spotify model. And only later, eventually, did the momentum gain enough speed for them to say, hey, hang on, it was never actually like that all along. It failed internally in our own company. So for goodness sake, stop holding up the Spotify model. It was tried in a few areas and it failed dismally, and we moved on. You haven't. What's wrong with you people? Stop listening to packaged sales pitches, because it wasn't about the learning. And yeah, I mean, they failed because they renamed things for no good reason. It didn't add value. And they changed things. They made it too complicated, too many managers, not empowering people. It was anti the real principles of Agile.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that the use cases for the success of Agile that have been promoted and praised are exactly the reasons why it might be falling apart?
Yeah.
Karl, I want to add to that, just in terms of your question, is it an IT thing still? Has it filtered through? I did a talk last year, I think, titled Beyond Agile, because I honestly use it in my personal life. I love doing home renovations, and this is the method that I use, and it is so successful. Why? Because it's a fixed budget. Everybody in the construction industry would love a fixed budget, and it actually works out that way, right? So fixed budget and flexible scope, and it's brilliant. It really works brilliantly. During that talk, I really, in preparation for that talk, I really started thinking why some CEOs, why some C-level individuals don't associate with this thing, don't even try it, or it fails, because if they look at the manifesto, it's very techy. Actually, it doesn't speak to business, it doesn't speak to HR, it doesn't speak to finance. And if I present this Agile for Executives workshop, we touch on those things, because where does a CEO go to talk about budget? The budget changes, but that's not mentioned in Scrum training. It's not mentioned in Kanban training, not safe. I mean, where do they get that information from? And I might share it actually in the chat group. So I came up with a business manifesto. Like, this is what we value over something else, right? Like the visualization thing I mentioned earlier. So I'll share that. I'll see if I can quickly find it and share that, because it's absolutely not an IT thing. This has been implemented in practices. I'm talking about doctors' practices. This has been implemented in preschool. This has been implemented in construction, like I mentioned, HR. This is definitely not an IT thing, and absolutely needs to. I mean, if it's stuck in IT, then the organization's stuck. Right? It absolutely needs to keep on, and it's not an end goal, by the way. It needs to keep on filtering. It needs to keep on exploring, and we're still learning, right? You might see these individuals as experts. We're still learning, because Agile is moving. Agile just 3 years ago, pre-COVID, was all about physical boards. It is the best thing, but guess what? It is actually about people. Anncois keep on mentioning it. It is actually about people. People don't want to sit in your office anymore. So maybe that physical board is maybe not the best thing since a slice of bread. So it has evolved again, right? It has evolved again. So yeah, just my 2 cents.
And I actually just want to go back to where Melani is, and you've actually triggered a memory of mine. The place where I've actually seen Agile run the best was not in a tech shop, was actually on a factory floor for an FMCG, where you see the teams arrive every morning before their shift, or as their shift starts. They have their stand up, they look at the matrices, they do their own inspection of the machines if things need to be adapted, because they're getting their quality reports. They're literally doing the inspection and adaptation at the machine. They do the entire stand up. Then there is a scaled version for the factory if there are issues that these can be raised. And there's an entire process flow. So, just I do actually want to point out, and thanks, Melani, was something which I realized when speaking to at that specific client where we're looking at how does this work in the business space. People first, as Melani says, like it comes across very techy, and it's like, oh, but you're the guy from tech, so why are you here? Well, actually know that your guy's factory is doing this better than the guys in tech, and you guys, you want to start this journey, but you actually don't realize you actually have some of the best practices going on your factory floor. So it changes the conversation very much, and as soon as there's that connection with, oh, that program that we use in the factory, and it works so well, and you're trying to bring it now into our workflow here, you generally also find that your conversation gets easier.
So where is the value for organizations these days? Is it in something that is still Agile connected, or is there something brand new that's required? Is it time for another revolution and another set of principles that come in and go, hey, to get work right, this is what you should be thinking and doing?
I think for businesses, there's one thing that they have to desire, and that's to bring about the next best thing that you can think of in front of your customer as soon as possible, right? If it's a feature on your website, whether it's a new physical product, we all want the same thing. We want to reach the market as soon as possible. And that is still agility that gives you that. Shorter iteration. So if it still feels like that gap between when business dreams up a new feature or a new product and it actually being used by the customer, if that cycle is still too long, well then agility, smaller iterations, and of course not flooding your teams with 9 different programs instead of one that really makes business sense. I still think it's that. I can't think of anything else that's going to give you more business value than that. And let's be honest, the world has also changed. Statistically, by the way, if you go to a website, brand new website, and you can't find what you're looking for in 3 seconds, statistically people opt out and go look somewhere else. So we have changed as individuals. We are always in a hurry. Business has changed over the years. We want to get that product out in front of our customer as soon as possible. I can't think of another way that would facilitate that process better.
Oh, Melani, you've overridden all of them, or at least blown their minds so that they don't know how to respond. Ewan, quickly, think of something diverse or different to say. Go for it, sir.
I think in many cases, Agile works brilliantly for smaller companies when they don't even know that they're Agile because they have to be a startup. They've got a short iteration cycle. They only get paid by their sponsors if they're a proper startup company. They only get funding and capital if they deliver frequently and regularly, and more importantly, stuff that actually adds value. The moment they don't stop doing that, they lose funding, which means they collapse, or their competitors do it better and iterate faster. And companies like Twitter didn't know what the heck they were doing in the beginning. If you read the origin story, they had some vague ideas about SMSs to groups, and there was no social media, there was no network, nothing like it is. But the reason they got off was they tried something, it failed, they tried something, it failed, they tried something, people like this, and it became something totally different. And we won't even talk about what's happening right now, but it's like the
clearly they've gone back to try and fail, Ewan. That's what they've done.
They do, but with a flamethrower. So
bigger and better scale. That it's rockets and social media. You burn everything up.
Exactly. I mean, some of those companies work. Elon's SpaceX, the space shuttle launched in 1982 with 1960s software. But at that stage, technology wasn't changing so rapidly and the requirements weren't changing, so it worked. But SpaceX, in such a short term, now they've got rockets landing themselves, multiple at the same time. Everything just takes care of itself. So there's some things that are going right, and they are also battling at scale. When they're a smaller company, it just came naturally. So I think
that's
part
the
of Agile
connection.
trying to keep those good things. Yeah, it's trying to keep the good things that you've learned and worked when you were small and keep them alive when you scale.
And I think that's the connection I was looking to try and find here, is that in the past, and I go back pre-Agile, right? Technology was the constraint. You had a limited amount of it. It had limited capability. Let me just phrase it that way. And you had limited resources that could be applied in that space to do things. So it made sense that things were really structured in order to optimize the use of that. And what you asked for was exactly what was documented. And hopefully that's what was produced. And for the most part, the gap wouldn't be very big because the creative element wasn't there. Technology these days, when we consult on the technology side, we go, you can ask me for anything. And if you ask the question, is it possible in tech? The answer is yes, it's possible. With infinite budget and infinite capability, yes, there's almost nothing that you cannot do with the tech these days. The constraint in the realization of what you want from the technology enablement is how the people work with it and how the people work together and how the people understand each other. And that to me now is the challenge in front of Agile or methodologies that stem from it, is how do you best enable the people dimension of solutions work? Because the tech is not going to get in your way. The tech will do it fast. The tech will do what you want it to do as long as you're able to communicate that, understand that, and affect it as quickly as possible. So this is the first time I've seen you nod so many times in response to anything I've ever had to say. And that included, what's for lunch?
So, answer first. Go for it.
Oh, sorry. Jean-Pascal and Claude Aubry, and I think the other guy's name was Raoul, I can't remember, 3 French guys in 2020 launched Radical Agility. I'm sure you guys have all heard of that. And what they've done is they've added on 4 prefixes to the Agile Manifesto, to the values, all right, to make them a bit more relevant to what they are today. And I'd suggest, I'd like to recommend that everybody goes and just reads up a bit about it, Radical Agility. And it actually makes so much more sense because it brings that into context. It brings in the human side to it. So it literally says self-organization. We value self-organization even more than we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So it brings that part in. It's absolutely brilliant. It's called Radical Agility. So do yourself a favor and go and have a read up on it. It's really, really mind-changing, mind-blowingly good.
Well, I'll certainly read up on it with the view of going, I wonder how long before Radical Agility is dead.
Let's do that. Let's take a break.
Phil?
It's also, so I just want to come back to, and thanks for that, and I like what Anncois, where Anncois and you and where we're taking this, is it comes back to exactly that. It's the people piece. Because that is sort of where I hate using this word, like the bottleneck is. So how do we empower people? And that's where, if we go back to this conversation of, is Agile dead? If we keep it simple again, we keep referring to our doing Agile, Scrum, etc. But there's that being Agile. It's that leadership space. It's that organizational space. How do you manage your people and that cultural change? Now, where we're starting to see in those organizations, I was saying, where I've seen people work where we're not Agile and they owned it because they traditionally weren't a tech. They went from a tech house or a tech background. They would be product driven or market driven or marketing driven. They're actually looking at things, and it's for them, they're calling it, and it lives under that whole business transformation umbrella. So, I suspect where we're heading with all of this is we might not start seeing things specifically as agile transformations, or we'll see it less and less in your larger organizations, unless it is a tech house, i.e., again, I call out the banks, insurers, etc. But your other organizations, agile will live under that business transformation umbrella in terms of how are we going to change our organization with all of these items you've mentioned, Carl. So, I mean, we can even go back to, industrial revolution, and over time, the tech revolution, and. Now, we're at the point where how are we going to move, again, it goes back to the constraint is actually how fast we as people are able to work with what we have. And how do we actually solve for that? And I think that's where, the only way we can do it is actually to borrow from the agile, and again, Anncois nailed it, from the four things, which is inspect and adapt, retrospect. So what is it this time around that we're going to do differently as we move into these other spaces to see how can we adapt it, but borrow from those other learnings, fail fast, and take things forward. So there isn't a clear-cut answer. And I think that's where we're seeing it is perhaps the question we should have actually asked ourselves is where are we as agile in the hype cycle or the life cycle? Are we still on the growth curve? Are we sort of maturing? Are we still at the start? And the same thing we do for all of our organizations, we're going to evaluate at what point do we go and say, as a philosophy, how do we actually spin out and change to move us forward in a different direction?
Cool. Well, perhaps we're in the trough of disillusionment, Phil. Maybe there's still a peak of
plateau of enlightenment is coming.
It's coming, and it won't be called agile.
I'm proud to say that is your Gartner quote for the day.
Sponsorship, yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So
sorry, Karl, I just want to jump in there. I so liked what you said. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, but it is so true. The challenge today is not technology. Like, if anything's possible, we can make it happen, dream it, and we'll see it through. It is people. The challenge is people, keeping people motivated, keeping people engaged, creating that sense of urgency in the corporate, being efficient, because running an efficient business is obviously important. So I really like that, and that's why agile as a philosophy or as a mindset, that's why it works, because it's all about human science, right?
Yeah.
I want to give a quick simple example. Stand-ups, for instance. What does a stand-up actually do? Think about it. There's so much science behind this. It creates a sense of urgency, because every day I need to but collaborate with my colleagues. I need to explain what I did yesterday and what I'm planning on doing. When it doesn't work is when you tell people what to do. And we see it every single day.
Yes.
The old way of managing, the old way of working just simply doesn't work. Telling people what to do on a daily and weekly basis doesn't motivate them, doesn't keep them engaged, doesn't give them the collaboration, belonging feeling that people are after. So there's a lot of softer things behind the word agility, behind this philosophy, that speaks to exactly what you said. People and not technology. That should be the focus. Yeah, I like that. Thanks, Paul.
Well, I'm glad. I'm going to take that as a win on my side, and definitely not one for Phil. And agree with you, Melani. It applies to the 7,999,999,999 people that there are in the world these days. Congratulations, world. We've reached 8 billion, but it doesn't apply to Phil. I'm giving you that break because based on your experiences again, I'm going to ask each of you to give me the one thing organizations should stop doing related to agile that you've seen lately. So the one thing, yes, pick your primary one that they should stop doing. Yeah. And then we'll follow that on with what's the one thing they should start doing? Yeah?
Yeah.
Anncois thinking hard.
Okay.
She's going radical agile. Start doing that.
I will, Melani, are you good? Otherwise, I'm ready to hop in. Okay. So for me, it goes to stop saying we have leadership buy-in if you, the leader, aren't willing to change. So for me is I'm going to give my start with it. Start understanding why you want to do this. Because realize this change is going to have to come from you as well. It's not something you can inflict on somebody and go, cool, we've done it, tick.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, mine was sort of similar. Stop telling people what to do. Right?
Yeah.
Let's call it micromanagement. People don't like that word, but it's real. Stop telling people what to do, because it really is not necessary. People want to work, they want to contribute. Really, I mean, I'm talking 100%. If you can get any low performer interested enough, engaged enough, motivated by the work that they're doing, really, nobody actually does need management. So stop doing that. Start finding out what you replace that with. Because if that's the culture, nobody does anything if you don't tell them what to do, and it is a reality in some organizations, then obviously you need something that will keep people engaged. It will, it will do that for you, so that you don't need to manage actively. You don't need to tell people what to do. So start finding out what that is. You will get to agility, but start exploring that.
Awesome.
Hey,
Anncois, you've had it. Oh, there we go. We're both going to pick on Anncois. Ewan.
All right. Stop being scared. Trust the process. So that's my negative and my positive. Stop being scared. The process will work. You're going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to work in the end.
Or it won't, and it'll be dead, and we'll go read another book, and it'll be okay.
You're going to do it. Stop being scared. Commit. It will work. We got you.
Great. Ewan?
And then for me, it would be stop comparing things. Stop comparing your company to some other company that has very little to do with you in terms of culture, maybe. Stop comparing teams to each other, because different teams are full of different people. They do things in different ways, and they should have the autonomy to do their different things in different ways. Stop saying this team delivers X bobs a month, and so you should do double that because you have more people. Stop trying to believe that you can predict everything perfectly because one team has a predictable product and the other team doesn't. That just demoralizes everybody, and it's not realistic if you really stop and think about it. And just focus on, keeping people happy and getting better, doing better than you did in the last iteration. And that's way, way, way more important than comparing teams, or even believing that you can.
I think Ewan just attacked 45-degree burn down charts as not being necessarily the best metric ever.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I'm aware that in all my enthusiasm and lots of questions to ask you, I've taken us all the way to 5 minutes before the end of our hour. I do want to ask our audience, if you do have any questions, please pop those into the chat window. More than happy to pose that at these experts in front of you, who will tell you all sorts of wonderful answers to the questions that you didn't even know that you had in the first place. Lloyd, I saw that you posed a whole 10 cents version there. I'm sure that we can add another chapter to your little text and turn that into a whole book on its own. Thank you for using chat for that purpose. It seems very creative and agile on your part. I just want to see if there's a question in there.
I'm also skimming it.
But Lloyd, it's spot on. This week
you've nailed it.
Isn't dead, but it transitioned from growth phase to maturity phase. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Well, if something's got a maturity phase, then I would go, it's time to find the next thing. Yeah. Be immature. Be truly agile. Go find novel ways of doing things, because you need to realize that the tech has liberated you. It's not a problem anymore. It's you and your creativity and your collaboration and your capability to think beyond Anncois' box, because the box is gone. Gone.
Spotty safe. That's where
Spotty safe. Oh, there we go. Yes, we both Spotty safe. That's the one we want to see.
Ewan doesn't like that. He's going, don't even mention them.
Mention it. Yeah.
I want to throw a comment out there regarding safe. I get a lot of clients that ask about safe. That we clearly need to go the safe route because we're a big corporate. Please don't. That's not what safe was built to do. Honestly, Safe is the Ferrari of agility, right? You don't need the Ferrari. You don't need to start with the Ferrari. You don't. Just start with the Polo. Just get somewhere. Yes, I mean, eventually you might get to safe, but please don't. I've just seen it fail so many times. Just comment out there.
Yep.
100%.
Times 2.
Clearly, there was something wrong with your screen there. Because I know that you have no heart, Phil, and one showed up on your screen. You might want to capture that and keep it.
No, that's why I was putting it out there so people can understand and follow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think we've got about a minute to go. I would like to say, first of all, thank you to all of you for joining in a session where you didn't know quite what to expect from it. I really appreciate you having made the time today to actually talk to folks and share your experience and your ideas on where we are within Agile. I think that's been fairly illuminating and fairly interesting in terms of where it was. And it even managed to include Phil in the conversation, which is an achievement in itself.
Thank you very much to you, Karl.
Yes.
Oh, most welcome.
I just want to say thank you, Karl, and also to guys and I see people have been putting comments in on the chats, as well as for me, something which I just want to always share is thank you for people using your emoticons as we've been going through the conversation. Where people aren't using the cameras, it lets us know that you're alive and that you haven't gone to go nap or walked off. So thank you. It just reminds us that you're there and you are engaged. So I just want to say thank you from my side as well.
Phil needs to feel the love. There you go.
There we go.
He has a heart.
Well, whoever he got it from, he should give it back to them when they ask for it. Yeah?
Thanks, Karl.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Karl.
everybody. To our audience, thanks for
Thanks.
joining today. Do join us on the next Inside
Karl.
session, which will come up soon. And have a fantastic day. Thank you, everybody.